Hi and welcome. This is going to be a live YouTube streaming broadcast. We're going to talk about the origins of Christmas in northwestern pagan, shamanic, ancestral understandings. So I know that this is sudden for a lot of you. I'm going to go ahead and get the introduction rolling, and then we'll get started. Later on, if you guys want, I'll answer some questions. But in any case, I just want to get this teaching out there. And if you're not able to watch it live, of course, it will be archived for you so you can watch it later. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome. This is Michael William Denny of the ThunderWizard.com YouTube channel. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to record some thoughts about Christmas and about the origins of Christmas. So my goal is not only to educate in this, but also to connect with people. I know this is sudden, but if there's people out there, first off, anybody out there, can you hear me okay? Just let me know that you can hear me and see me okay. And while I'm waiting for the delay here, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So first off, I just want to say welcome and happy holidays to everybody. However you practice that. The channel has been taking off, and we've been getting a lot of people coming in from different backgrounds and understandings. So good, thank you. Thank you for letting me know you can hear me. So I want to talk to you about not only our Western tradition, because the Western tradition of Christmas is highly derived from pre-Christian Germanic spiritual traditions. When we talk about the pagan origins of Christmas, you'll hear a lot of people talk about Middle Eastern stuff, or maybe something from the Mediterranean, maybe in Italy or Rome or something like that, Egyptian stuff, which is all of that is true. We find the same themes going through a lot of mythology all around the world when it comes to dealing with the winter solstice. So as you know, the winter solstice is when the day is the shortest of the year. And so the days are getting longer and longer and longer until we hit the winter solstice, and then we come out of that and the days start getting, they get shorter and shorter and shorter. And then as we come out of it, the days get longer and longer and longer. So as we're coming into it, as you saw before, I talked a lot about Ragnarok in the previous one. And I was doing that not only because I was thinking about that, but also because, energetically speaking, this is what our minds are doing. We've evolved in a certain way that when the days are getting shorter and it's getting colder, we start to go inward and we start to think about death and destruction. And so the myths and the stories surrounding the coming out of the winter solstice have to do with springtime and awakening and rejuvenation. So there's all kinds of things that we do. Still to this day, and some of you listening may already know all about this, but still to this day in the foothills, or in the mountains in Austria and places like that, they still dress up in costumes, and they beat drums and bells, and they dress up as demons, and they go through the I forget what they call that. Somebody will probably know on here. But that has to do with driving away the demons of death, which is symbolized in when the days get shorter and shorter and shorter. So now, as we're coming into what we would technically call Christmas, when we celebrate Christmas, I thought it was important to talk about the message of hope that is in our ancestral mythology. So this streaming is going to be very free flowing. I have thought about it, but a lot of it's going to be from memory. So let me just take a look, make sure everybody's here. Yep, I do see that everybody is here, or at least we have some people here. Yeah, Krampusnacht. Thank you. That's what it's called. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. So there's an energetic reality behind our need to do the things that we do. We need to, where I live now, people have all kinds of Christmas lights up of different colors, and that has an effect on you. Whether you like it or not, it puts you in a different mindset when you see those lights flickering. And, the decorating of the Christmas tree. Now, I guess I can start off with that. Your basic Christian, if you ask them what the Christmas tree is, they may have a vague understanding that there's a pagan origin to it, but the reality is that it has a very strong connection to pre-Christian mythology, and that is having to do with Yggdrasil, the tree of life. And it, even to this day, the fact that we put a Christmas tree in a corner of the house and we put presents underneath it and we adorn it, we put all kinds of things on it. We put lights on it. We put little shiny balls on it. We put, silver-looking things around it. We put popcorn around it. We put a star on the top. That is nothing less than what you do when you worship an idol. That's what you do when you worship an idol. You put an idol somewhere where it has prominence, and then you dress it up and you put gifts underneath it. So the whole idea of the Christmas tree is nothing more than worshiping the tree of life. And I find it really enjoyable and interesting and ironic that Christians who are so against all kinds of pagan things, they are performing the most pagan of acts. They are worshiping the tree of life. The fact that we put the gifts underneath the tree symbolize that we see that the tree of life is what gives us all of the gifts. And, when I was a kid, the ritual was you'd get up in the morning and you'd, get yourself together and get some coffee or cocoa or whatever it was. And then you'd sit around in front of the Christmas tree, and then somebody would go and take gifts from the Christmas tree and give it to you. That in and of itself is a ritual saying that the tree of life, the source of all life, is giving you all of your gifts. And this happens to us on an unconscious level. We don't realize it, but that's the message. And so, even to this day, when people ask, well, I'm a Christian, I don't want to do Christian stuff, how should I celebrate Christmas? One of the things I tell them is just celebrate it. You don't have to worship Jesus if you don't want, but everything else that goes on during Christmas is absolutely in line with the original shamanic understanding of this time of year, and how what we're doing is we are acknowledging that energy is now has come to in really pulling itself inward and now is about to break forward into spring, which is what all of these festivities are about. So you don't have to change anything if you don't want. All the stuff about putting a Christmas tree up and adorning the Christmas tree and putting presents under the tree and giving of presents, that is all in line with what our ancestors used to do, and that's why we still do it. There's another tradition, that we practiced here in the U.S. I don't know. I'm sure they did do it in other places and in Europe. But we would hang stockings in front of the fireplace. Now, this is really interesting because the fireplace is a traditional place of worship. In fact, in English, the word for fireplace used to be Inglenook, Inglelennook, Inglenook, and it means the nook of the god Ing. Ing is the rune of sacred fire. And in all Indo-European languages, including English and Germanic languages, there were two words for fire. And in the English, it was Ing and fire. In the Vedic tradition, you've heard of this, they worship Agni, the god of sacred fire. It's the same being, just a slightly different pronunciation of the exact same deity. So the Inglenook, or the fireplace, is where people would gather around. Now, the symbolism here is very clear. If you have a bonfire outside, that we would call a fire. It's outside, it's external. The internal fire, the fire of internal spirituality, is Ing. So that's why the fireplace was called the Inglenook, because inside of the house you had the sacred fire, which was Ing. Now, you would cook your food over that fire as well, but you would also use that fire to give your sacrifices to the gods. And even to this day, if you look around in some places in Europe, you will find that the chimney will have an Ing rune on it. And that goes all the way back to when the fireplace was the place of Ing. The Inglenook is important because you gather around the Inglenook, and what does the Inglenook do? What does the fireplace do? It gives you warmth. And so this symbolizes the warmth of the spirit. And Ing, or Agni, is the god that sends the sacrifices to the heavens. And the smoke that rises from the sacrifices is symbolic of the prayers that go to the gods. And, prayer is not, today we have I'm not going to say a wrong understanding of prayer, but, putting your hands together and saying, oh, please give me this, oh, please give me that. That misses the shamanic understanding that there is always an exchange of energy. So that is why there would be a sacrifice. Whatever it was that you put on the fire, whether it be, a slaughtered animal that you were going to eat later. By the way, people always ate what they sacrificed. So, that did a couple of things. It not only gave them an appreciation of that life that was being given, but they offered up that life to the gods. That ensures that the life of that animal is going to go to the next level of evolution. Somebody recently commented and said there's no such thing as cruelty-free, in terms of eating animals. And I get that. I understand that. But our ancestors also understood that. And so when they would slaughter an animal, it was always a sacred act because they knew that the life of that animal was for their own survival. And they made sure that the soul of that animal went directly to the gods, and so that the gods would then make sure that the soul of that animal would go to a higher level of evolution. So we had a deep understanding about that. So getting back to the Inglenook and the stockings over the fireplace, it's interesting that we put the stockings over the fireplace, because when I was a kid, you'd put your stocking up and then you'd go to sleep and you wake up in the morning, and when we were little kids, the first thing we would do when we would come running around to the fireplaces, we'd look inside the stocking to see what gifts were in there. And, the idea is that Ing is giving you sacred gifts on this special day. We, even in Southern California, it didn't get super cold, but it got cold enough that we could light a fire and we could sit in front of the fire. And so the warmth of the fire, the warmth of the family, the warmth of the home, all was centered around the god Ing, the sacred fire. And even to this day, we still put pictures of our ancestors. I mean, where do you put pictures of your grandparents and your great-grandparents? And you line it up on the mantelpiece above the fireplace. Why do we do that? Because the fireplace is the altar of the home. And so we are asking that the god of Ing, sacred fire, not only take care of the souls of our ancestors, but we are giving our ancestors a place of prominence. The sacredest place in the house is above the fire, where the sacred fire is, where the sacrifices of the home would be laid upon, where the prayers connected to the sacrifice rise with the smoke up to the heavens. We're putting our ancestors there. We are basically saying our ancestors are, on the same level as the gods. So it connects, our ancestors connect us to our spiritual reality. All this goes on all the time. I'm surrounded by people who are doing this right now who have absolutely no idea that that is what they are doing with all of these things connected to Christmas. So I just wanted to talk first off about the energetic reality of Christmas and why we do what we do. We've evolved to do this, and it has more than just symbolic meaning. It changes us energetically. So again, people ask, well, how should I worship Christmas? Just worship it. It's already in place. You don't have to worry about any of it. If you have a problem with the religious stuff, don't go to church, or when you do go to church, you can think of Baldr instead of Jesus if you want. But all the stuff, all the stories surrounding Christmas are coming from our ancestral background, and it was something that the church could not get rid of. In fact, if you know anything about the Bible, according to the Bible, Jesus was not born on December 25th. I don't know the exact date he was supposedly born, but the reason why the church chose December 25th is because we already had in place a worship around a sun god, and we had a worship around the sun god going down into the underworld and then resurrecting again. And I'm going to share with you a really important myth about that, which has to do with the origins of mistletoe and how Baldr was connected to that, and how you'll see how that has come now and is still under the surface. Under the Christian Christmas celebration, under the surface is still Baldr, because we still do things like we have the Yule log, we have mistletoe, and we're going to talk about mistletoe today. So why don't we just go ahead and get started with that. So I'm going off of memory here, so forgive me if I forget some of the aspects of this, but the origins of mistletoe go back to the myth that I talked about in the previous live stream when I talked about the death of Baldr. So we're going to talk about that, because mistletoe, I'm finding out, has a lot of other properties besides just the symbolic connection that it has. So the myth goes like this, as I remember it. The myth goes like this. In Asgard, the gods were doing what they do. Thor was off fighting some giants, as he is often doing. He was off fighting some giants, and so the gods were in Asgard, and they were drinking lots of mead, and they were partying, and they were getting drunk, and they were doing what they do. They were boasting and telling stories. They were being the gods. And Baldr was there, and Baldr is a representative of the soul. He's also a sun god. The sun means the soul. If I haven't told you again, if I haven't told you, I'll tell you again. The word Sawul, S-A-W-U-L, is an ancient Germanic word for the sun. It is the same word that we have today, but we spell it S-O-U-L, soul. Saul and soul both mean the soul within our body and the sun in the sky. The sun is a gateway to the celestial soul, if you want to look at it that way. It is a symbol of our soul. So just as the sun is in the center of our, the center of our planetary system, the soul is the center of who we are. Without the sun, there is nothing. Without our soul, there is nothing. So Baldr is a representation of the soul. And in this case, he was the soul of the gods. He was the soul of Asgard. And so this was something that the gods loved. The gods loved being around him. He radiated this warmth and this love, and everybody just loved being with him. And his name, by the way, means bold. So it's interesting. Bold doesn't mean, just stupid, idiot, brave. It means free with the soul. So somebody who is bold and fearless is somebody who's free with their soul. So the gods were partying, and being that Baldr was the soul of Asgard, he was infinite and he was omnipotent, meaning that he had all power and he couldn't die. He was immortal. And so they loved to, because they're warriors, they loved to throw things at him, because he didn't even have to defend himself. If you threw an axe at him, the axe would fly off, or it'd get all bent. I thought that was funny. They'd throw spears at him. The spears, like Superman, would just bounce right off of him. They would throw knives, rocks. It didn't matter what they did. Nothing could harm Baldr. He was completely, just nothing could touch him. And so, Loki. Now, as we know, Loki he's not the mischief maker, meaning Loki doesn't go around saying to himself, how can I cause people problems and make mischief? Loki is the aspect of the gods that says, when nothing works, we've got to find an alternate way to get people's attention. And Loki laughs, but his laughter is not coming from derision. His laughter is coming from an understanding. When we laugh and we say, we're laughing with you, not at you, that's the kind of laughter that Loki brings. Loki is, of all the gods, he is the most serious. It's not that he's this jokester. I mean, he is. He's a very, very, very funny guy. But that's not why he jokes. In fact, if you know anything, about in dramatic understandings, I used to be an actor. Comedy is tragedy turned outwards. When something is so tragic that, you're going to break down in tears, you just got to laugh at it. So what you do is you take tragedy and you hyperbolize it. You exaggerate it, and then we laugh at it. So the stuff that we laugh at in comedies is stuff that, in reality, lots of times would put us on our knees and make us cry. So this is Loki. He's walking around and he's seeing this, and he can't stand it, because when the gods are not taking Baldr seriously, when they're treating him with this kind of disrespect, the soul of the gods, Loki can't tolerate that. So he has to find a way to get them to realize what they're doing. And his goal is to help them to realize the worth of the soul. So he goes to Baldr's brother, whose name is Ignorance, and Baldr's brother is blind. This tells you ignorance is blind. And he asks him, hey, why aren't you celebrating with the rest of the gods? Why aren't you making fun of your brother over there? And he says, I can't see. And Loki says, oh, don't worry, I'll aim for you. So Baldr's brother, Hoder, is that his name? He says, oh, great, thank you very much. Now, Loki had overheard Frigga, Baldr's mother, the mother of the universe, talking about how she had made a deal with all of the beings in the universe. So imagine every single being in the universe that exists. The mother of all life went to every being and made them have a pact with her, an agreement that they would never harm Baldr. That's one of the reasons why he was immortal, why nothing could harm him, because the rocks had decided that they wouldn't harm Baldr. The minerals in the ground, the metal in the ground, had decided they would never harm Baldr. So if you make a spear with steel or bronze or gold or whatever, that had come out of the ground. The earth itself had said, I will never harm Baldr. So those things could never hurt him. So that's why nothing could harm him, because Frigga had made this deal with all of the beings in the universe. Except for one being called Mistletoe. Now, according to her, Mistletoe was either too young or too insignificant. I don't think it was too insignificant. I think that she said Mistletoe is too young. Mistletoe can't make a decision for itself. And don't worry, I can make sure that Mistletoe never comes anywhere near Baldr. He's my son. I love him. So Loki knew this. So Loki had a little tiny sprig of mistletoe and put it on the end of Hodor's arrow. And so Hodor pulled back and Loki guided him and aimed it right towards Baldr. In my mind, I think it was his heart. I think they aimed for his heart. And Loki told him where to pull back, okay, and now let go. And Hodor let go, Ignorance let go, and in went to everybody's shock and disbelief. Can you imagine the disbelief on their faces? I mean, there must have just been an awkward silence that lasted for a long time. He's kidding that he's going to pull it out, but he didn't. He fell to the floor and he died. And so you can imagine. I mean, this myth to me speaks really deeply to me, and I get emotional when I talk about it. So I can imagine what that must have been like for them. And so there was a funeral, of course, and now we talked about Nanna. Remember in the previous video we talked about Nanna, and Nanna was the wife of Baldr, and Nanna could not survive without him. So when they put him on the funeral boat, she looked over his body and she died out of grief. So they put her there with him and set the boat aflame and put it out to sea. And of course, that is how they went across the sea to the underworld. So it's interesting, again, we have the sea because the sea represents emotions. And so it's through our emotions that we let people go. It's that we have to travel that. When we die, we have to travel the sea of our own emotions, meaning we have to surpass our own physical emotions. And but they, even though Baldr was a god, he's sent to the underworld. Even though technically he died in battle. I'm just realizing that now. Technically, Baldr died in battle. He didn't die of illness. But they sent him to the underworld. Now, this is representative, as I've said before, this is representative of the soul in the human flesh. It represents the soul being incarnated. It represents the soul forgetting its infinity. That's why when you come into this life, you don't remember. Little kids do. You can talk to little tiny kids and they'll remember. Especially some of them, if they're very gifted, they'll remember where they come from. And then as they get older, they slowly forget. I remember being 4 years old, and I can see it in my mind. I was just kind of in my driveway, and I was staring off into the distance there, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to live forever. And I didn't mean that I physically was going to live forever. I just knew that my essence was that I would live forever, that I was immortal. So I had this connection to my soul. And it also, interestingly enough, we're on this Christmas, talk about Christmas, so I guess I can talk about this. I remember being 4 years old and realizing at a very deep level that I'm connected to everybody. And that if I feel something, and whether it's positive or negative, other people have that same experience. So I remember at 4 years old coming to the conclusion that I can't treat people differently than I want to be treated. And if something makes me happy, it's going to make them happy. And if something makes me sad, it's going to make them sad. So I remember, without anybody telling me about it, that I made that decision that I was going to treat people the way I wanted to be treated. That's the power of the soul. The soul has this power to remember its infinity, and little kids have this power. That's why it's so important that we nurture that in kids. We nurture their imagination, and we empower that in them. Our school systems can oftentimes, take that away. Certainly our religious systems can take that away. So it's really important that kids be allowed to keep that connection to their spiritual memory for as long as they can. Maybe they can, who knows? Maybe as we go into the future, kids will remember their past lives. Anyway, that opens up a whole other issue, which we don't have time for. But so Baldr and Nanna go to the underworld, and Nanna is the feminine aspect of the sun. We talked about that in some previous videos. And so Nanna has to die with Baldr when he dies. She can't live without him. So the male and female aspect of the soul is sent to the underworld, and they're given a place of honor. So unlike the Christian hell, they stole the word from our ancestors, hell, and turned it into a place of eternal torment. And it is not a place of eternal torment unless you bring that torment with you. If you have guilt that you're absolutely bent on punishing yourself, you can take that with you into the underworld, and Hela will create a nice little private space for you to create your own little hell. A while back, I wanted to know more about Hela because I had some feelings about her, and I was getting some inspiration, and I wanted to have a deeper connection, so I asked for her to give me a vision or give me a dream so that I could know more about her. And sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for, because I did. I went to bed that night, and sure enough, I had one of those lucid shamanic dreams where I experienced Hela. And it was, how shall I say it? I'm not going to say it was an unpleasant experience, because she, like her father Loki, the love, I'm getting emotional, the love that she has is unbelievable. But it's the kind of love that loves you so much that she is not afraid to be with you in your pain. And the one thing that I saw from her is that the reason why she's in hell, in the underworld, is because nobody else has the amount of love that she has. And that she literally acts as a barrier. That if you were to go past hell, there are other dimensions beyond hell, that if we as human souls, if we were to go past that, we would not be able to survive. Our soul would come apart because we're not made for that. And she literally acts as the last barrier to, outer darkness, whatever that is. Now, don't worry, no souls ever do go past that. She never lets that happen. But the amount of love that she has is, she will sit with you. If you want to spend 10,000 years or 1,000,000 years or 10 million years in your own grief, she will sit with you for that long. And she will not utter a word, and she won't try and talk you out of your feelings. She allows you the honor of doing whatever it is you need to do, which, for me, I would say, listen, why spend all that time? It's unnecessary. Get on with life. She would never say that to you. She has far too much respect for you. So if you want to create a hell for yourself, she will be there, and she will stay with you. She's this silent witness to all of it. As you can tell, it had a very strong effect on me. So you can also, when we don't achieve our highest desires in life, which is what dying in battle means. It means that you live fearlessly without any holding back. This is why we keep reincarnating, because, the vast majority of people hold back. Even if they die in battle, meaning they got shot or they got killed, that's not in itself enough to get you to Valhalla. The idea of dying in battle means that you die without any regret. And your whole life has been living from the soul. When you live fearlessly from the soul, then there's no place for you to go but to Valhalla. We're going to talk about that. There's a whole book coming about that, and we'll talk more about that. But going to the underworld can be a place of healing and rejuvenation, and Baldr and Nanna go to this place of healing and rejuvenation, and they party and they feast. And when later on, when the gods, when the messengers of the god goes and finds out about Baldr and Nanna, they're doing just fine down there. This represents sorry, I'm just looking at this because it's telling me the stream is interrupting. So forgive me if there's a lot of people online. So if it breaks up, my apologies. So it is a place of rejuvenation, and it can be a place of healing and of festivities. And so the soul can enjoy living in the body. That's the symbolism behind that. The soul can be in the body and can enjoy living in the body. But we, as Loki wants to bring to our attention, we must honor the soul. So let me finish the myth. I got a little sidetracked. My apologies for that. The way the myth goes is that Baldr and Nanna go to hell, and all of the gods in Asgard are sad. They're beside themselves. They're so depressed. Because why? Because the soul of Asgard is gone, meaning your soul. We talked about this. This is how the gods view you. The gods view you, whoever you are listening to me, as the soul of heaven. And so when you incarnate to become a human being, all of heaven weeps because they will miss you. They will miss your infinite soul presence with them. So all of the gods in Asgard are weeping, and they are in horrible sadness. And Frigga, of course, is beside herself because her most beloved son is gone and is in the underworld. And so she goes to Hela and she asks Hela, please give me back my son. Please give Baldr back to me. Any mothers can understand what that would be like. And Hela says, I can't. These are the rules. I can't break the rules. And so Frigga says, what can you possibly do? There has to be something that you can do. And Hela says, I'll tell you what. If you can get every single being in the entire universe to weep for Baldr, I will let him go. And Frigga goes on this path, and she gets everything in the whole universe to weep for Baldr. Again, this is how amazing you are. I just have to take a moment to people who believe that there are negative entities pretending to be gods out there trying to trick you. That is not what's happening with the universe. You are so incredibly loved by all of the beings in the universe. They look at you with such tremendous awe that you have the willingness, the bravery to be a human being and to go through all of the trials and tribulations that we go through. The entire universe weeps for you and looks upon you as this amazing being, even above the gods, because of what you choose to do in life. That's why it's so important that you look at the difficulties in life not as punishments, but as feats of strength. And as long as you understand that, you can get through anything. Anyway, I digress. So all of the beings, all of the entities, everything in the universe, down to the tiniest pebble, down to the tiniest atom, everything weeps for Baldr except for one being whose name means gratitude. And according to the myth, this is a giantess. And then in sort of parentheses it says, and we think it's Loki. So they think it's Loki pretending to be a giantess. And of course, that's said with, Loki, that Loki, he won't even cry for Baldr. Nope. His name is Gratitude. He can't cry for Baldr because he never stopped appreciating everything that Baldr is. He, from the moment that Baldr lived until he died, Loki of all of the gods never disrespected him. That's again, Loki never disrespects your soul. This is why Loki is your best friend. If you understand the depth of him and you try to understand him, he is the best friend you will ever have. So Loki says, I can't. I can't weep for Baldr. That would mean if I wept for him that I didn't appreciate him, and I never stopped appreciating him. I appreciate him now. And so because Loki wouldn't weep for Baldr, Baldr stayed in the underworld. And then that's why we get into the whole myth of Ragnarok, and we talked about that, how Baldr is released from Ragnarok. It's our soul being released from our body when we die. And when we die, the entire universe, all of the gods, all of the spirits rejoice. I mean, it's an amazing party. The only thing that keeps us as souls from experiencing that when we die is if we are wrapped up in our own narcissistic, issues. That's why it's so important to be clear, to get your unconscious mind clear, so that when you die, you can enjoy the party, because there will be one. When the gods and your guides and the rest of the universe, when you die, there is a huge party because they missed you. So, but again, as I said, if you're wrapped up in your own issues, that's part of the lesson here. That's this long haul of going through being incarnated and going through many lives of incarnation. It's a school that we've chosen to be in. So sometimes we have some difficult years. We have some difficult times. So anyway, I'm seeing here things like lost sound. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, so I apologize if what's going on. Now, let's get to Dustin Williams' question, which is what I'm about to get to. Why is this whole relation with mistletoe and kissing? So now you understand the power of mistletoe. Mistletoe was the one thing that had the ability to kill Baldr. And so the reason why we hang mistletoe and the reason why we kiss under the mistletoe is to make, and I get emotional talking about it. Some tough guy, huh? Frigga is still mourning your loss, the loss of you. And so we put the mistletoe up because when we kiss under the mistletoe, we remind her that we still love each other, that we still appreciate each other. Kissing under the mistletoe is, of course it's going to have all kinds of connections to fertility and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of Frigga, the mother of the universe, what she wants is she wants to see us love each other, which is what, happens in Christmas. It's all about love and family and togetherness, and why it can be such an amazing holiday. And why, that's why I say, people ask, how can I, honor my ancestors? I say, just whatever is going on, it's already part of our tradition. Just replace Jesus with Baldr if you've got an issue with that. Because we still got the myth connected to the sun god dying, going under the earth, and then resurrecting again. We still have the same myth there. So, you can just paste Baldr over Jesus' face if you want. In fact, Jesus is pretty much, if you know anything about where Jesus really came from, my belief is Jesus never really existed. He was a creation of the Roman elite, and he was a sun god. And he was just, a further of that same sun god myth. So that's why he has a halo. He has a halo because he's a sun god. So that's the deal. That's why we have mistletoe, and that's why we kiss under the mistletoe. So assuming it looks like everything is still good. So do we have any other questions about anything? That was a very emotional talk for me. I hope you enjoyed it. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them if you're there. So while I'm waiting for you to respond, I'll go ahead and look at my notes here. If there aren't any questions, I want to go ahead and talk about where the channel is going. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being on the channel, for communicating on the channel, for being a part of the channel. I really appreciate the questions. I really like that we're starting to broaden and get more people on the channel. I want to continue to broaden the scope of this channel as well, but we'll see where this goes. So that means I'm going to experiment, and I'm going to try some different things. So, you know, the best way to get what you want on this channel is to put it into the comments. If you want to see a video about something, or if you have a question about something, put it in the comments of each video, and that will help me to know where the channel wants to go. I'm still going to make decisions that I think are best for the channel. I'm still going to put videos out there that are going to get more attention. So there, you may be wondering, why is that's a weird thing? I'm doing that to get, you know, more people on the channel for the health of the channel. So how do you become closer to the gods? That's a huge question. I'm assuming based on that question that you, I don't know if this is true for you, but a lot of people don't feel a connection with the gods. So our ancestral understanding is you have to get close to nature. So I'm gonna go off on a subject here. This is something that I've noticed increasingly with people as I've gotten older. You know, everybody says, you know, back in my day, but there's a lot of truth to it now. We live in a time where there are whole generations of people who have never lived without internet and cell phones and all of these electronic devices. You know, when I was a kid, we had television, and there were, you know, 13 channels, and of those 13 channels, you may have had 3 or 4 actual channels that you could watch. You had a telephone that you had to pick up and dial. There wasn't even such thing as an answering machine. If you wanted something, you had to actually go there and talk to somebody. If you wanted to learn something, you actually had to go and learn with somebody. That creates a whole thing in the brain. The brain connects a lot better when we do that. When we live entirely in this electronic virtual reality that we have, it creates a disconnection. And so I am telling you, I'm seeing this more and more as I get older, more as kids are coming up. Each generation is more and more disconnected from themselves. And that's why you're seeing so much hopelessness in the world. That's why you're seeing so many people who don't believe in anything. And it doesn't matter. You can bring it right to them. They still won't believe it. And that's because they haven't connected with nature. So to answer your question, connect with nature. Find ways to connect with nature. Use your body as well, but connect with nature. Put your devices down. You know, leave your phone at home. Go camping in the woods for a week without any electronics. You'll find out real quick. But that's a great way to connect with the gods, because the gods connect to us through reality and through nature. So also we have all kinds of meditations. So practice the Hula breath. In short answer, practice the Hula breath meditation. Look for that H-U-U-L breath. Look for that on my channel and do that. That will connect you to nature. It'll connect you to yourself, and it will open up the pathway to the gods. Is there a connection between Hela and Hula? Well, I would say that there is a connection, but they are two different deities. Hela is the goddess of the underworld. Hula is not the goddess of the underworld. She is the earth. And I would say she's actually connected to the giantess earth. But she has a strong connection to her. There's obviously a sound connection, which means that they have connection, you know, vibratory connections. My personal belief is that even though there's a connection, they are two separate deities. Thank you, Lucinda. She loves the ascending videos. Thank you very much. Natural foods also. Well, natural foods are great. Of course, that's going to connect you to the earth, but I think we got to go farther than that. We've got to really, especially kids growing up, if parents out there, I was out to dinner with my fiance and we were having sushi, and there was a woman there with her kid. Her kid must have been, I don't know how old, little kid. But the kid had a phone in front of him the whole time watching a video. And my thought was like, that kid needs to sit there and connect. The kid was still talking to his mom the whole time, but he had to connect. He couldn't be separated from the phone. He had to be watching YouTube the whole time. So I don't know. I don't have kids, so I don't know what it's like. But if I did have kids, I would be really making sure that they had a strong connection to the earth and that they understood that the devices are not a connection to reality. Breaking Bueno, what is a god? It's a very long question. The short answer is the gods are celestial entities. They are entities connected to the stars. One definition of Asgard would be the fort of the celestial deities. And the reason why people worship stars is because stars have within them. Sorry, I'm looking at Soren Gill. Remove my question. No, your question is fine. I appreciate your question. I'm sorry if I came across like I was criticizing you. I wasn't. I appreciate your question. The stars have within them essences. Everything has its own essence, but stars specifically have a very high vibration. So we worship them for their purity. They have a tremendous purity about them, and each star has its own life. So to answer your question, a god is basically a star, the highest vibration of life is going to be found in what we call the gods. All the different kinds of entities have different vibrations about them. We can still connect with them and worship them, but the celestial gods are connected to the stars. So, all right. So I don't know if there's any more questions. If there are, feel free to. We've got 12 people on here. Feel free and put a question in there if you want. I'm gonna close with something that clearly came out in this teaching, which was that love is really important, and understanding how powerful love is in our ascension. It's hard for me to say that. I'm a big tough guy, martial artist, all that kind of stuff, but I've pissed people off when I tell them one of the things I don't do well is I don't respond well to people who attack other people for things that are out of their control, like their ethnicity, their culture, their background, their religion. Now, I will attack religion if a religion is destructive, but I will never attack a group of people because of their religion. And it's really important that when we're in this, this holiday of love, it's really important that we look at that. We look at our prejudices and we look at the limitations in our mind, because when we are limited in our mind, that's going to limit our spiritual advancement. So I would suggest that meditate on that. Meditate if you really want to get the most out of this season, besides loving yourself and loving everybody around you and celebrating love. Ask yourself, what prejudices and what anger do you have against groups of people, or how do you judge people, and how can you move past that? How can you find the Baldr in that person, or the Nana in that person? And then we get compassion. So, Lucinda Sky asked a very good question. How do you know if planets get stronger or weaker in your chart? That is something that has to be looked at by a Vedic astrologer, or if you want to look up Vedic astrology, they're called, what are they called? There's a Sanskrit word for it, I forget. There are houses in the chart called upachaya houses, which means expanding, gaining houses. And so you find out which houses that are in there, and you find out which planets are in that house. Now, it's going to be different in a Vedic chart than it is in a Western chart, so you have to do this with a Vedic astrologer. If you try and do it with Western astrology is very different, and you won't find it. So there you go. So that's it, my friends. I appreciate your time and your patience. I hope that we'll find out how well this went through. But this was my Yuletide message, my solstice message, if you want to even use the word Christmas message. This was my Christmas message to you, and I hope that you sensed the love and appreciation I have for you in allowing me to be part of your life. So, what you can do for me, if you want to give back to me, I love presents. What you can do is you can go back and look at the video where I said the 5 things that you can do to get the most out of my channel. And share these videos with people. Go on to Facebook and MySpace and Smileyhead and whatever other things you have, and put links for the different videos on here. And come back and watch the channel. Watch the videos. Watch the videos. That will make me happy. You'll learn a lot. You'll get a lot of your questions answered just by watching the videos that I have on here. Also, go and look, Google me, Michael William Denny, Amazon, Michael William Denny books, Michael William Denny DVDs. And there's all kinds of materials out there that, I mean, the most powerful things I can give you are the exercises and the meditations, and those are going to be found in the videos, in the DVDs, and in the books. So look those over. Again, I don't do this to promote myself, because the truth of the matter is I make almost nothing off of those books. So it's not a moneymaker for me yet, but I do it so that you have the materials so that you can learn this path. My job is to get this path and tell you everything that I know and make that available to people. So that's the most powerful thing you can do for yourself. And of course, you can contribute to the channel. Should be a little thing below there that says contribute to the channel. I'm appreciative of all of that. And as I said before, continue with the questions and with the comments, and that will be very helpful to me. So with that, my friends, I want to wish you a very happy holiday season. And don't worry, there's plenty more to come. I've got a lot of spare time this holiday season, so there's a lot more videos coming. So that's it for now, my friends. Until next time, may the gods of our ancestors be with you and bless you.